Expressing our appreciation for our partner is pretty easy to do when it's a new relationship. When that's the case, a lot of the times we're expressing it all of the time. We're saying a lot of things that we appreciate about them, ways that we like them. But as you get further and further along in a relationship, especially when a couple gets married, especially when a couple has children together, that can really feel like it's drying up, where the culture of appreciation is maybe diminishing a little bit or it's completely gone. And so today we're going to be talking about why that happens, why it does dry up, and how you can be proactive so that it remains at a good place or so that you can get it back to a good place. So what do we mean when we're talking about expressing appreciation? To me, expressing appreciation isn't just saying the simple thank yous in the day-to-day. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I certainly think that you should be able to say those things to each other and for that to be a norm in your day-to-day. But I think adding a little bit extra to it some of the times can really help. So what does that mean, expressing that level of appreciation? So to me, it's being very intentional about it, that it's not just saying thank you for doing this or that, but it's saying something like, I really appreciate this part of you, this characteristic that you have, or how you are always this way around the house, taking care of this, taking care of that. And so that can be words, that could be notes around the house, that could be texts that again are intentional, that could be maybe a letter that you give to the other person, but it can also be other things. It can be physical gestures, it can be gifts. So why is it that that dries up over time? So there are various reasons for that. I have three in my mind that are maybe some of the most important. The first one being that it's not normal for you. That maybe you grew up in a household where there wasn't a culture of appreciation, that people just did things. And again, maybe there were those simple thank yous, but it wasn't something that people went out of their way to be able to say, hey, I really appreciate you for this or that. So I think that can be one reason. A second reason is that we've built up resentment over time. And so we just don't naturally feel appreciative of the other person. If our relationship has been going on for years and there's been built up disagreements or fights that we've had, what we're doing is that we're unintentionally building up a culture of resentment and fighting. And so if that's been going on for years, then even if you do something great, I'm probably not going to feel that appreciative because my resentment is clouding that appreciation. So that can be another one, that there's just so much turmoil that's in the way. And then the third is that we've just gotten complacent and we haven't been intentional about expressing that appreciation. This can come in a lot of different ways throughout a relationship, but it can come in heavily when a couple has a child or children, that our focus is so much on work and taking care of the kids and taking care of the house that we're not thinking about expressing our appreciation to the other person. It can be easier whether it's at the start of a relationship or when we don't have so many different things going on because we have more space in our minds for the other person. But when we have kids, when we have full-time jobs, when we have a home to take care of, those things can get in the way, and we can, again, unintentionally prioritize our relationship under everything else that we have going on. So what I'd really urge you to do if you find yourself in a place like this is to ask yourself, what got us to this place? I mean, is it just complacency and there isn't a lot of resentment or something like that? Or is that the case where we've been in a pretty rough place for a while? So why should we express appreciation more? It might sound like a dumb question, but I think it can help to have tangible reasons for it. So the first one is that it's one thing to know the other person appreciates you or to know that you appreciate the other person, but it's a different thing to express it and to hear it. For a lot of couples, they come in and they'll say, like, yeah, I mean, the other person just knows that I appreciate them or they just know that I love them, which that might be true, but actually hearing it from the other person, actually going to them and saying like, hey, I really appreciate you for this or that. I mean, that gets to a different level. It really resonates in those moments, or hopefully it resonates in those moments if there's not that resentment. But it hopefully resonates instead of it just being an assumption, but there not being this reminding of it on the day-to-day. We're also giving positive reinforcement to each other when we give each other praise. If there's something that you're doing differently because I requested it, because I said, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you were to do this or that in the future, but then I don't give you that praise, I don't give you that acknowledgement, it's less likely that you're going to continue doing that thing, especially if it's somewhat of a burden on you. But if I say to you, hey, just so you know, I recognize that you did this and I really appreciate that. That's giving them positive reinforcement that'll hopefully keep that behavior going and solidify that over time, instead of me not saying anything, you maybe over time feeling like, okay, I'm doing this thing differently, but I'm not getting anything for it. Like there's nothing, I'm not even getting acknowledged for it. That behavior is more likely to diminish over time. And then another one being that usually when you're in a relationship, giving and getting appreciation, it's from one of the most, if not the most important person in your life. So it's not like you're just getting appreciation from someone on the side of the road. That might be nice to hear, but isn't really going to stick with you in that meaningful type of way. I mean, it's with the most important person in your life that you're hearing these things from. And so it just feels really nice to be seen by each other, to be able to hear those things that the other person really appreciates. Again, in a very explicit type of way, not just knowing that the other person feels that way. And then finally, what we're doing is that we're creating a culture of appreciation. I've mentioned that a few times today, but we're building that culture so that it can buffer against the negative times that we have. So if there's a couple and there's maybe some appreciation like once a month, they don't have a great buffer against the tougher times, that the tougher times might dominate. And so when there's something that happens that is not pleasing either person, then they can really get upset by that because they don't have a culture of appreciation. But if we're building that culture where maybe a few times out of the week we really intentionally express something that we appreciate or praise the other person for, when there is something negative that comes up, it's more likely that that negative thing is looked past. So that culture of appreciation is almost like a force field around those negative times that do happen for any relationship. And so what are some tangible things that you can do to be able to go from a relationship where there's not as much appreciation or praise to one where that's there in abundance? One thing that you can do is just try to make it a habit, whether this is verbal, whether it's text, whether it's in a note, whether it's in a letter, to try to make it a habit. And at first, to be conscious of this. It might feel forced. It might feel like, okay, I'm conscious of this. I'm intentional about this. But to me, that doesn't matter. I mean, if you're doing something positive for the relationship, it doesn't matter necessarily that it's forced. Now, if it's fake, that's a different story. If you're just making things up that you don't actually believe, that's a different story. But if it's intentional or if it's quote unquote forced, I don't necessarily look at that as a bad thing. It's just getting into the habit of it. And then two, so what do I appreciate them about? What do I praise them for? So it could be something that they do, or it could be just a way that they are. I think it's completely fine to say something like, hey, I appreciate that you did this today. Another thing that you can do is just express appreciation for how they are, whether it's, I really appreciate your kind of sense of calm in the relationship, you really stabilize me, or I really appreciate the energy that you bring to this relationship. It really makes life feel more vibrant. So something along those lines. Number three is pay more attention to what they do or the things that happen that you do appreciate. Again, this might sound like a silly point, but it's really important just to be cognizant of these things. Because when we're in a relationship where there isn't this appreciation, we're not scanning for the things that they do that we can appreciate them for. A lot of the times we're scanning for what we can complain about. So to try to be on the lookout for things that they do that you can appreciate them for. And then lastly, every now and again, just express appreciation or express some praise for something that's random, not for something that they're doing currently, not for something that they did in the past week, for something that maybe was years ago or 6 months ago, or just something that pops into your mind. Just praise them for something or express that appreciation for something that's random. I think a lot of the times out of the blue appreciation can resonate even more than daily appreciation for what we're doing around the house and at work. So I hope that your relationship is one where there's already a lot of appreciation that's being expressed all over the place, but if not, I hope that this video can help. Thank you for watching, and you can click here to watch a video on the pursue and distance cycle in relationships and how to be able to break out of that. So thank you for watching. Hope you had a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.